Today we are traveling 57 years back into one of Africa's darkest periods in history. You're not ready for this one. Now imagine being such a genocidal crackhead that you order a mass execution on Christmas Eve in a national stadium while playing Those Were the Days on loudspeakers. Oh, and to top it off, your executioners are allegedly, and take this with a grain of salt, but they are dressed as Santa Claus while carrying out these killings. Because why the hell not? This is the insane, absolutely wild true story of Francisco Macías Nguema, Africa's answer to every comic book supervillain ever, and the king of African genocide. This guy had Hitler blushing in the grave. And wait till you hear how he met his end. Let's dive in. Macias was born in 1924 in Equatorial Guinea. His father was a witch doctor, and he had an uncle who was sacrificed by said father in a ritual. So his childhood was traumatizing, to say the least. As a young boy, Macias dabbled in his father's medicinal head, frequently getting high, and those habits stuck to adulthood. As president, he was known to regularly bake his brains in cannabis and other hard substances as a result of his childhood exposure to drugs. Macias temporarily abandoned his African traditional beliefs and practices after receiving basic education from a Catholic institution and later being baptized by Spanish missionaries. He would then proceed to take the civil service exam and eventually passed after his third attempt. Against all odds, he rose through the ranks in the political class. He started off as a court interpreter, then became a mayor, then minister, and eventually deputy president of the government council. This all happened within 1 year. As Equatorial Guinea was a Spanish colony, he wouldn't have achieved any of these without considerable trust from the Spanish authorities. The Catholic Church even made him a catechist at some point. This guy had both the Spanish authorities and the church wrapped around his finger. By 1968, Equatorial Guinea gained independence, and Macias became its first president. Spain thought they had their guy, a puppet to keep things running smoothly. But turns out they just handed nuclear codes to a madman. Spain saw all the red flags from the very beginning, and they ignored it all. This was a guy who once praised Adolf Hitler as a misunderstood hero who meant to liberate Africa, and even went as far as calling himself a Hitlerian Marxist. 1 year into his presidency, the economy collapsed. People were starving. Macias, of course, blamed Spain. And to be fair, they did break some transition agreements. But Macias took things to a whole new level. He banned Spanish settlers from owning guns, he seized their homes, he stirred massive anti-Spanish sentiment, and this led to over 7,000 Spaniards fleeing the country. And when your entire educated, skilled class flees, guess what? You're not a country anymore. You're a dumpster fire. Realizing the repercussions of his actions, he tried in earnest to prevent the mass exodus, but failed. So his country's economy sank even further. Now, when I tell you this man's shuttering was a crime scene, I mean it in every literal sense. On the 24th of December 1969, at the National Stadium in Malabo, 189 alleged dissidents were executed. Some were shot, some were hanged, some were buried up to the neck and left for red ants to finish the job. And there was a soundtrack, Mary Hopkins, Those Were the Days, being played in the background. High on so much power, and possibly weed, Macias gave himself titles like Unique Miracle, Grandmaster of Education, Science and Culture. He demanded priests thanking before Mass. Churches displayed his photos with captions like, God created Equatorial Guinea thanks to Macias. He also banned eyeglasses. Yes, wearing eyeglasses was punishable by death. He banned the word intellectuals. He outlawed Western names and rebranded himself as the one true God. At this point, even Idi Amin was blushing. It is estimated that approximately 1/3 of his country's population was killed during his reign. That is 1 out of every 3 people killed. And the average life expectancy in Equatorial Guinea at the time dropped to 34 years. Let us sink in. 34 was your age limit. Eventually, the international community could no longer remain silent. The International Commission of Jurists, Amnesty International, the European Commission, the World Council of Churches, the Organization of African Unity, EF's very own Avengers at the time, had to rally together to protest Macias' cruelty. And so to avoid being overthrown, he handed control of the army to his family and clan. One of such leaders was his nephew, Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. But even family wasn't safe because Macias became paranoid, and so he started executing relatives, including Teodoro's brother. So Teodoro said, okay, I think I'm next. And in 1979, he led a successful military coup. 15 days later, Macias was found by an old woman sitting under a neem tree, eating sugar cane as he was exhausted. He was trying to flee with $4 million in cash. Before attempting to flee, he allegedly burnt up to $100 million of state funds as a final FU to the country. Here's some bonus insanity just in case you think this guy was misunderstood. He threw his foreign minister out of a window. He had entire villages razed to the ground in an attempt to catch a single dissident. He built private prisons in his villa so he could torture and kill dissidents at his leisure. He prepared meals for dead people. One of his maids described how he would order a table to be prepared for 8 people. The only problem was, he was the only person on the table who was alive. The rest of his guests were severed heads. He booby-trapped roads and bent boats to prevent his citizens from fleeing the country. He outlawed Christianity and promoted the slogan, "There is no other God but Macias," and he meant it. This guy was once a catechist. He literally broke bread with Christ at one point. When captured and brought to trial, Macias was sentenced to death 101 times. It was a tough night for the angel of death. But here's the insane part. The soldiers refused to carry out the sentence. No commander, not even his nephew, could get a single soldier to execute this guy. And why? Because he cursed them. Yes, on the record. He said his ghost would hunt anyone who killed him. So his nephew Teodoro had to bring in Moroccan troops to do the job. Francisco Macías Nguema left behind a country in ruin and a legacy of madness that still haunts Equatorial Guinea. His nephew Teodoro took over, and he is still president today. And his son is also vice president and will most likely be taking over from his father. I would like to know your views in the comment section if this is the wildest story you've heard all week. And remember, if your president starts making you thank him in church,